Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island, and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron, Wendat, and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island, and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. Members of council, any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, there being none, if we can get an adoption of the minutes from our Parks and Rec meeting held April 23rd, 2024. Moved by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo, support by Councillor Burns. All in favor? That carries. And we'll move right into items for consideration, which is item 1, the new park name at Laurier and Mio, which is the Director of Public Works, Mr. Osborne, to present.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This report is in response to a request we received to name the new park in the Laurier Horizons development, which is formerly known as the Harmony Lakes development, Gino Sorgi Park. So we received this request and had replied to the Sorgi family with a letter stating that we didn't feel that it fell within the criteria of the parks naming policy. Within the request, maybe I'll let the Sorgi family, I understand their delegates, go through their requests at that time. But there were ultimately 2 agreements that were formed as part of getting that right-of-way. One in 1995 for the installation of a trunk water main, and one in 2010 for the widening of the right-of-way dedication to allow the construction of Laurier Parkway. So the town does agree that these are both important. The dedication of the right-of-way was important and vital in the building of Laurier Parkway and the development of the Howard Bouffard area. However, there are items within the agreements that went back the other way. So with that, we still maintain the position that we don't believe this is the appropriate name or that it falls within the policy. And we have gone through the policy to look at other potential alternative. So there's other options within the policy. We went through those, they're within the report, there's 4 of them. We felt those really didn't fall within meeting the criteria as well. So in addition to the parks naming policy, within this report, we've identified some other names of former councilor members that are part of the street naming policy. So in the report, you'll see 2 sets of lists. The first set is a set of names from the roads naming policy of former council members. And then the next set of names is a list of council members that weren't on that policy because it's fairly outdated. So we just added those names of retired council members since the policy has been updated. So our recommendation in council is to choose a name from these lists or an alternative that council may suggest. There's also one more small list that we provided just for council's information of public items that were named through the parks naming policy. So for instance, Vince Marcotte Park, Mike Raymond Drive, William Varga Library, Joseph Drochet Drive, and Judy Recker Crescent. With that, I'm available for council questions.
Thank you very much. Before I go to questions, if I can get whichever of you would like to come and speak on behalf, come up to the microphone and just say your name.
Hello. Hello, my name is Angelo Sorge. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight on a matter that holds great significance to our family. I'm here with my brother Tony and my sister Anna, while our extended family is watching over from home. We have a request that the park at Mayo Boulevard and Purina Street in the Harmony Lakes / Laurier Heights subdivision be named after our father Gino. It has been since 2016 that we've been advocating for this dedication, and tonight we hope to convey why we recognize it's so important to us and to our community. While we understand that town's policies on naming streets, parks, and other civic spaces, we believe that sometimes these policies may overlook significant residents and community builders like our father, Gino. As an Italian immigrant, he arrived in Canada at the age of 18, seeking a greater opportunity in the future. His story is not just one of personal success, but also one of community growth, support, and legacy, and that we feel that he deserves to be commemorated. Arriving with little more than hope and determination, Gino worked tirelessly to build a new life. He became a successful entrepreneur owning Silverstein Produce for over 50 years. Through his business, he not only provided our family, but he also supported local agriculture, teaming up with farmers such as the Bondys and the DeRoches to grow and distribute their produce throughout Windsor and Essex County. His business has become a cornerstone of local commerce, contributing to the economic vitality of LaSalle. He was more than a businessman, he was a community builder. He had a deep sense of responsibility to give back to LaSalle in numerous ways. For a period of time, he supplied local strawberries to the Strawberry Festival, creating cherished memories for many families. He sponsored many hockey, baseball, and soccer teams, providing opportunity for young people to engage in a healthy, constructive activity. He believed in investing in the community, not just through business, but also for personal involvement. And he also encouraged others to do the same. His efforts made LaSalle a better place to live, work, and enjoy, fostering a sense of pride and belonging among residents. Our family has called LaSalle home for over 3 decades. His vision initiated a multi-generational family presence in LaSalle, with several of his children, his grandchildren, and great-grandchildren now living in the subdivision where the park is located. His dream was to see LaSalle thrive, a dream that lives through his children and grandchildren. Sadly, he passed away before seeing the full fruition of the development he envisioned many years ago. However, his legacy continues and inspires us and many others in our community. With the support and approval of the Horizon Group developers, we respectfully request that the council honors his legacy by naming it Gino Sorge Park. This name will not only commemorate his contributions, but also serve as a lasting tribute to a man who's embodied the spirit of community, hard work, generosity, and family. I thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. We believe that dedicating this park to my father would be a fitting tribute to his enduring impact on LaSalle and an inspiration for future generations. I would like to respectfully address the administration about the 2 documents, 1995 and 2010. We don't deny that they're there, but we believe that the land was donated. It is first because the town documents were referred to as such, and secondly, at the time it was donated, we were told that the government would provide a grant to pay for the infrastructure and roadway. We did not think we were being compensated by the town because a grant was being provided to the town. We're not engineers, developers, planners, or politicians. We are a large family with a lot of due respect for my father. We're none of those things. We don't argue or respond to any in a sophisticated and a detailed way. What we know is that we were asked by the town to contribute this land because no one else would, and we did. We gave excess where no one else would. This is such a simple request that doesn't hurt anyone and recognizes the input and impact of my dad. He did not ask of this for himself. We asked for him because we recognize what he did and he deserves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak? No? Okay. Members of council, any questions or comments on what's been presented so far? Councillor Burns?
Okay. Here's what I remember from 1995 and 2010. I remember the engineer of the day, Bob Hayes, telling me, a farmer in the area that we had looked at, to have the road go straight through, was holding us ransom for $1 million or $2 million. I'm not sure the exact figure. And that we had a part of a road allowance out there, and in conjunction with the Sorge family, that we were able to make a deal to put the the water line through initially, and then secondly, in order to put the parkway through. That's why the roundabout is there. Also, I think that's a tremendous amount of money. It saved the corporation. Subsequent to that, then Deputy Minister of Province of Ontario, Dwight Duncan, was able to get us a grant for $3 million through the efforts of Mayor Baxter at the time, and that was a $9 million project that we put together to allow this road to go through. As a result of that, I know that Bob Hayes had told me that without the significant value of the property, we wouldn't have been able to get a road to go through without paying significant amount more money, and felt the other farmer in the area was holding us hostage. So as a result of that, I'm certainly concurring and will make the appropriate motion at the time to fulfill our commitment, I believe, to the Sorge family and name it after their father. Just in the report, I'll address that now. Perry Lane was not named after Dennis Perry, but a Perry family. Antea Lane was named after Lucien Antea, and Lucien was a councillor in town, Ken's father. And Bondi, I'm not sure, but it certainly wasn't Mark Bondi. And that one was, it'll come to me, the developer anyways, but Sue Hamden, she doesn't have any or whatever, but those were the ones that were through. I guess the ones that we have missed, the fellow councilors, were Mike Raymond Drive as well as Judy Recker. And I'll make a motion after everybody else votes. Thank you. Or has comments.
Thank you. Councillor Ruccio Spagnola.
Thank you, through you. As I reviewed the letter and spoke to Mr. Sorge regarding this, I do understand that the town has policies, but I also understand that there are unique situations that oversee those policies. I took down some notes. I believe that Mr. Sorge was instrumental with the land and with the property, and I do at this time believe that the naming of the park should be named after their father. I understand that it could be setting a precedence, but I also believe that there are unique situations that do need to be looked at. You did say that there was a letter from 1995 stating that there was, okay, so things like that I can't oversee, and I concur with what Councillor Burns is saying as well, and I would approve that the park be named after Mr. Sorge.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Capada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, if appropriate, I'd like to ask Mr. Burns a question. So you spoke about 95. You were on council in 95. Was this discussed at council, or was this just one of the normal routine courses of business? Because one of the things I want to make sure is that as I go forward, clearly understanding what my role and responsibilities are in this community, that if I'm given direction through her worship to say something to a member of the community, that carries weight, and that the last thing I want to do is undo any alignment with her worship's direction to me by not doing what we'd agreed to years later. So if you could expand on that, Mr. Burns, because I wasn't on council in 95.
Okay. That's a good question, because I know it was discussed among council, but I'm not sure if it was ever discussed in an open meeting or a closed meeting. My memory's good, but we're going back a long way, but it certainly was discussed by Mr. Hayes in front of, then at that time would have been Ken Antea, the mayor, or the CEO, and certainly with Larry Solani as well. So because it was land acquisition, it probably would have been in a closed meeting rather than an open public meeting. But if you're asking me 100%, I'd be a fibber to say that. And I know that 5 years ago I threw out all my records from 91 to 2000, or else I could have gone back to that. Thank you.
Supplemental, Your Worship, to Mr. Sword, you have this letter from 95. Could you read it, sir? Yes, please.
I just wanted to say that the letters say it's a donation, and several years later, now it's a dedication. So I think those are two different things.
Thank you, Your Worship. My questions have been answered.
Any other questions or comments? No? Give everyone a minute just to read those. Councilor Reno?
I'll just make one comment. I obviously wasn't around in 95 for the meeting or the meetings that Mr. Burns was part of. But I can appreciate in today's day and age when the town is trying to do something and landowners get in the way. And it usually ends up costing us a lot more to do something, and people get upset. And you know, when you have someone that steps forward and donates land, I think it brings a lot of weight to the situation. And in listening to Mr. Burns and the way things transpired, I didn't quite get that that feeling from the report, but I do trust in his words, and I do believe that there, you know, people come to council for a little bit something different, and we can't always help them out. But I think in this case, with the letters and with the speech by Mr. Burns, I could support naming it after their father. Thank you.
Mr. Militia?
Perhaps I can just provide, excuse me, a bit of context and background. So just for the record, I was not here in 95. I'm old, but I'm not that old. But again, in reading the letters that Mr. Storage has provided, what I suspect happened is that back in, I want to say in the early 90s, there was a major feeder main project that built, I can't remember the size, 16-inch, 8-inch feeder main that came across LaSalle. And what would have been normal at that time, and even when I started, was that landowners in the areas would donate land in order to have, in order for us to put that service in. What you see before you in the documents that Mr. Sorge has provided is the actual Revenue Canada tax receipt. So they would have donated the land, and we would have issued a receipt in an amount of whatever the amount is on this document, and then they would have done whatever they did on their side in terms of the tax impact of that. That's not to say whether or not it should or shouldn't be named, or whether it could or could not have been. That was normal practice back at that time, is that if developers were to donate property in order to facilitate an infrastructure project, there was a value associated with the land, and that land was then conveyed, and that land was conveyed to us, and we would then issue a donation receipt. The developer does get a benefit from that in terms of that infrastructure is there and available for them, but they also have to give up land as part of that. So they also give up land for the benefit of others as well. And so I don't want to overlook that side of it. So I think that situation from 1995 is a little different than the situation that Mr. Burns referred to in the early 2000s, where we were beginning to construct Laurier Drive through, And I believe that the landowner that Mr. Burns is referring to was to the west of this property, which is why the alignment of Laurier is where it is today. Again, benefits to all those involved that Laurier has gone through, but again, from administration's perspective, quite frankly, if we name it after Mr. Sorge or we name it after a former member of council, we're just following the policy. And from what we have been directed is that members of council wanted more input into the naming of infrastructure, whether they be roads or parks or the like. And so that's why, again, please don't take any disrespect to your family or anything from administration. We're just following the rules and the directions that we're given, and that council wants to have more input and, quite frankly, wants to see more of the, from what we took as more of the retiring members of council that have donated time and effort to the community to be recognized in some way. So that's why, the report's sort of written the way it is. And quite frankly, if again, we're at the direction of council, whatever name you would select. I will say though, whatever name is selected tonight, we would require some direction as to how you want to, we would like administration to approach this going forward. Our current process is that when it comes to road or any other infrastructure naming, we go by this list. The developer has an opportunity to come forward to council and ask for us to set aside this policy. But again, this is what we're going to go with, unless we're directed otherwise.
Thank you. Mr. Osborne?
Thank you. Just to build on what Mr. Militia was saying about the policy, will be, as part of the Parks Master Plan, which is going to be starting soon, we hope, we're going to be looking for some guidance from that process on a potential new parks naming policy or some guidance or guidelines on how we could go about that. So I would expect that as that process kind of nears its end, we'll be developing a new updated parks naming policy or parks and roads naming policy or variation thereof. So that will be coming in kind of the midterm future. And then maybe just one more clarification, and I'll thank Councilor Burns for bringing this up. In that one list where you mentioned Mr. Perry and Mr. Bondi, I did mean to mention that those aren't necessarily linked directly to those individuals, but they just happen to be the same name. So thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Burns?
Yes, in 1995 with the water main, I believe it was 16 inches. It ran from basically where Heavenly Rest is. It runs from there down all the way to Maple Street. And Maple Street's maybe 8 or 10 inches, I'm not sure. And the new line went to Essex Golf Course and improved in my area where I live on Golfview Drive, the water pressure in that area, because it was very low and the pipes were, I can't tell you how old. So very significant, just on that basis, significant contribution to the residents in 1/3 of the land mass in the town of LaSalle. So with that, again, Jeff, if you're, Councilor Reno, if your motion is to support it, the new name change, I'll certainly second it, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I get to a motion, Councilor Desjarlais, did you have something you wanted to add? Can't hear you yet.
Thank you. Through you, it was an interesting letter to read through and some interesting history that goes back many years before my time on council. And we do have policies in place. I agree with that. However, sometimes those policies I think we need to take a look at, and this is one of those situations where we have a family that has really helped the town out, helped us grow. And as Mr. Burns just related to, like 1/3 of the township, or it would have been a township back then, were helped by taking this property. So I think that this is one of those scenarios where I would agree with backing away from our policy and naming the park after Mr. Sorge, and I would be in full support of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the motion, I guess my only comments is I actually believe this process has worked. I know we're here and maybe you're hearing quite the opposite from council of what's the recommendation, but I think that's the whole point of the policy was that we had something set, and if there was ever a doubt or a question, then council had a chance to come in and have their say and make sure that it was named after something we considered to be significant to the town of LaSalle. So I thank both you as well as administration for bringing this forward, because administration, they have the tough job of following the policy, and it's council who gets to kind of, you know, change their mind and go in the direction that we feel is appropriate. So I thank administration for following the policy we put in place and giving us the opportunity to hear your side today. So with that, I will turn it over to Councillor Reno if that's the did you want to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I wasn't sure, Mr. Burns had said that he would make a motion at the time, but it doesn't matter. Either one, I think we're both on the same page, so I will make a motion that we name the park after Mr. Sorge.
Second that motion.
Okay, so we have moved by Councillor Reno, support by Councillor Burns, all in favor. And do we need clarification of that motion? Can we clarify what your motion is, please? Because it's not the one that's being recommended. So if you can just clarify it.
I would like to make a motion that we do not follow the recommendation, but instead we name it Sorge Park. I'm sorry? Yes, as in the request.
And so moved by Councillor Reno, support by Councillor Burns, all in favor? And no one's opposed, that carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I guess any questions or statements from council members on anything parks related at this point? Councillor Reno?
Thank you, Your Worship. I did, Councillor Burns and I had the opportunity to attend a federal conference about a month ago in Calgary. And I met a few people and networked a little bit while I was there, and I happened to meet the ward councillor for the ward in London where Storybook Gardens is. Now, as we all know, Storybook Gardens has a trail, much like what we are building in LaSalle. And I asked her some questions about the other 9 months of the year when it's not being used as a trail. And she had mentioned that they purposely, even though it was in a closed area, they purposely tried to create some small one-off events at their trail to remind people of its value. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, and I'm not looking to create festivals per se, but one-off type ideas, things like maybe a roller skating night. You know, people have come to us before saying, you know, can we roller skate at the Volmer and things like that. But, you know, maybe if they did a Friday night, we hired a DJ. We didn't necessarily bring in 100 staff. We just brought in a DJ and we invited people to come down and skate if they wanted to, or possibly do a farmer's market on the trail at some point. Just, I'm hoping that maybe, not for the next meeting, but because we've still got a little bit of time to realize what the project is going to look like. But if we could maybe start getting some ideas amongst your team of maybe some inexpensive one-offs that we might be able to do to bring value to that trail for the other 9 months of the year. We all understand it's going to be a beautiful thing with the trees and the memorials and things like that, but just something that will draw people down, maybe draw down some of the naysayers, draw down people to celebrate this new area that we have. And if I could just suggest that maybe not the next meeting, but the one after, if we could maybe put some ideas together for this committee of some things that we could do to try to draw some people into choice of better words, glorify the new infrastructure that we have. Thank you.
Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On that request, Councilor Reno, we will be back in front of council in a few meetings or so in the next month or so, because we need to talk about the operational plan of how this operates in the wintertime. As part of that, we got to get a sense during that meeting and for council's approval, those operational hours and things of that nature. They will also be looking at operational hours of what this will operate into the summer months and in the spring and fall months. Once we get those operating hours, then I think at that point we can start to look at various options for if available, what programming can happen there and things of that nature. But certainly, first, I think in a staged approach, we really need council support on what operating hours we want to operate down there. Because if we leave it as is, it's subject to our parks bylaw and it closes at 10 p.m. And so I don't think that that's opportune at that location. It probably needs to be something a little bit later. How do we operate it? How do we maintain it? What staffing do we work? So it's going to be a bit of a staged approach. So please give us a bit of time to get back to you on that. I think our first step is as this facility is opened, it's going to open in the wintertime. We really need to nail down those operating hours for winter operations and how staff is going to man that facility and that operation of that infrastructure. And then as spring comes around, we will be able to circle back with council. We really need to get a sense of how busy the water play area becomes. There's been some conversations with Rotary about them wanting to do certain things in that circle, symphonies and things of that nature that they would like to sponsor. So we really need to work out some of that stuff. So we've had a lot of these internal conversations, but it's a little bit of a stepped approach, and if you give us some time to work through some of that stuff, and then we can certainly come back before council at appropriate times.
Okay, I respect that. I mean, we have a lot to figure out, and that's kind of why I was mentioning, not the next meeting. I understand that, we need a better idea of, like I was saying, of what it's going to look like and what it's going to be like. So I respect that, and I'm not looking for something right away, but I am looking for it to be in the back of your mind, especially if there's opportunities like what Rotaries might be presenting. Thank you.
Councilor Burns.
Just basically two house leading situations. I was called by a resident over in the Demore area on Demore Drive, and it looks like we contract cutting that grass out. But the question is, who does the weeding underneath the trees? And when I went out to visually inspect it, I mean, the weeds are horrendous. So I don't know if it's the contractor's responsibility, and I don't know if it's our responsibility. So I would leave that with administration to find out and correct the situation. Again, when I look, the second one is the bushes around this facility, especially the yellow ones out front. They need to be trimmed, and they're not being trimmed. So when I look at it, I consider the town hall my home as a taxpayer. I keep my bushes trimmed. I expect the municipality to be the leader on our own facilities. So I would hope that someone from Parks and Rec, whoever's responsibility, would look at it, get these bushes trimmed and neat the way they should look. And the final thing is, it took a long time to get the water feature finally finished, but it looks great, so thank you for that. Again, at FCM, I was there, and in the trade show, I saw a lot of these electric battery-run lawnmowers. So one of the things that I thought, we can't do all the parks with them, but what a great idea to maybe have Parks and Rec look into having one that we can use around here and trim these areas of grass with an electric lawnmower and help reduce just a little bit of our carbon footprint, which I think would be just a great idea. Whether it's feasible, whether they last long enough, I don't know. So I don't think we have to act on that, but I will bring it to budgets, and then we can go with it forward from there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or statements? There being none, the next Parks and Rec meeting will be held August 27th at 4:30 PM. We'll adjourn this meeting and resume at 6 PM for our regular council meeting. Thank you.